Protect yourself from paying your builder's tax bill if he doesn't pay it. Coming up today with Tej Gill, we discuss the CIS construction industry scheme. Welcome, Tej Gill from Nidger Accountants. We've got a phenomenal topic here for our audience, haven't we?
Hello again, Andrew. Yes, we do. This is, I couldn't think of anything more riveting to be talking about for people.
You've sold that to the audience already, Tej. But
well, it's always the things that least riveting is sometimes one of the most important things, right? So worth doing.
So the construction industry scheme, shortened to CIS. We've all heard of it if you're in property development, but what actually is it?
So the construction industry scheme, the CIS, was set up essentially to prevent the revenue from losing out on tax receipts from contractors, subcontractors in the construction industry who maybe didn't always fill out their tax returns or didn't completely fill out their tax returns. So it's almost like essentially a PAYE scheme around the construction industry, and it covers works from demolitions, alterations, stud work, fitting bathrooms, kitchens, plumbing, painting, decorating. So there's a wide range of activities that get covered within this. And the idea is that essentially the contractor then withholds the tax as they pay the subcontractor and account for that back to HMRC on a monthly basis. And in that respect, then HMRC say, right, well, this work's been done, this has been deducted, and they, people that they'll be able to match up at the end of the year when those subcontractors then submit their tax returns to say, right, well, you've overpaid, you've underpaid, and send a bill or a check for the difference. So yeah, it's essentially been set up to prevent tax leakage and make sure that the revenue gets its cut of income taxes from the construction industry.
What we're effectively saying is, from a developer's point of view, you're acting effectively a bit like a payroll company, deducting tax from the contractors that you have. And isn't there bits of paperwork that flow between the contractor and yourself? Because don't most people just pay their builder a bag of cash and it's done?
Well, yeah, I mean, you make a valid point, and we'll come on to that in a set. If we step back and just a bit more about how the construction industry works or when it applies, there's three elements that you need to consider. One is that there needs to be some kind of construction operation, so all that stuff I listed before. There needs to be a contractor, and there needs to be a subcontractor. So if it's just if it's one thing that's not included within that is works done to your own home. So if you're doing a large extension or something like that, you don't need to worry about registering for CIS. But otherwise, if those three elements are present, then on the face of it, CIS rules would apply. Now, in order to determine whether, as a developer, you get caught by it, and you can sometimes be caught by it. Sometimes you think, well, I'm not actually a builder. I'm not doing anything. I'm hiring one person. They're dealing with it all. But actually, there's a few circumstances in which the developer themselves could become the contractor or deemed contractor, and therefore have to register for CIS themselves as well. And it's more based on the facts of the case and what is going on. So if you are building to sell, then that would bring you within the CIS industry scheme. So you would need to register for CIS, and you would need to start making those deductions and run a CIS, get your accountant or whoever runs your payroll to also run CIS on these subcontractors. One of the other things that the revenue could look at in establishing, well, what is this company actually doing, is also the codes and your industry classification codes at company's house. If you're down as being a company that just leases real estate, then and you happen to make 2, 3, 4, 6 flats above a shop, then you could argue that that's not really part of the trade. But if the industry classification codes do say that you undertake development projects, then there's more risk that the revenue will also come back and say, well, hang on a minute, you probably should be registered, given that you're saying you're developing and you're actually doing some development work. The other thing that can get you caught as a deemed contractor is if you spend more than £3 million on refurbishments or projects in a year. And so, that alone could, and that's cumulative across the projects in that company. So it's not that there's one massive project and that's it. It's if you've done 10 £300,000 projects, you're going to have to register for CIS. So that's where a developer can get caught. Now, the issue with not understanding when you might be caught is that you don't register. If you don't register for CIS, then you essentially it's very much a self-assessment. It's a self-governing kind of scheme where once you're registered, you need to then make sure that you go through a process of verification where the contractor you hire will give you their details, and you have to go to HMRC and verify whether they are registered to be in the construction industry scheme. And I'll come back to why that's important in a sec. But if you don't do that step, then you're leaving yourself open for HMRC to say in the future, if that builder, that contractor you hired, didn't account for any tax to HMRC, but they can establish that they did work for you, then you could well be liable as the developer for not registering for CIS and not deducting 20% off the payments to the contractor and accounting for that to the revenue. And that can happen up and down the chain. We're seeing not only in CIS and other taxes as well, where the revenue will look down the chain and say, well, somebody hasn't complied with the rules. We're going to look up the chain and we can go after anybody in that chain, because everybody should have, the systems are there to be able to say, right, well, I've checked everything I need to check in terms of verifying contractors and everything. Then if you haven't done that, then you're leaving yourself open to getting stung with potentially your builder's tax bill.
So surely the builders should be doing this, though. I mean, I know builders are really good at their paperwork usually, but surely the builders should be operating the CIS scheme on behalf of all their subcontractors or people who are working with them.
So builders should be, yes, you're right, they should be. Does everybody always do what they should be doing? But a builder could also be a subcontractor and a contractor. So they could well be running the scheme and withholding stuff from withholding 20% from the contractors, subcontractors they're hiring. But if the developer is also a deemed contractor, the contractor in the middle should be getting it deducted as well. So they may well think, well, we're doing our part in terms of deducting from the subcontractor, but if you haven't done your part in understanding what you need to do for registration, your compliance purposes, then you're going to need then the contractor essentially won't be looking at that from their angle. And the only thing you can really do to establish whether you need to or not is think about those few things that I mentioned, but also talk to your accountant and get a solid answer from them of whether or not you need to be registered for CIS as the developer. So I mentioned I was going to come back to the thing about the rates as well. So there's essentially CIS work. There's 3 rates for CIS. The standard is 20%. So if a contractor is registered for the CIS scheme, then they will, when you verified them, you will find out yes, they're registered, and you can withhold 20% tax from them. If they give you their details and you're not able to verify them, then you need to withhold 30% and account for 30% to the government. And there's something also called gross status, where if the contractor has a spotless tax history and record of payments and everything else, and they've submitted everything on time and all those things, then the contractor can get something called gross status, in which case you don't withhold anything. You still need to do the returns, because it's still a 0% rate, but you still need to do the returns, you still need to submit them each month, and but you don't need to withhold anything. So generally, if you can find a contractor that is gross status, then that's normally a good indication that that person is that contractor, that company is going to be quite reliable, should we say, because they've met all their compliance obligations. So you can imagine then that they obviously would be quite useful to have on your build.
So as a property developer myself, how would I go about asking an accountant or the builder to help me navigate through this? What advice would you give there to make sure that you are not clobbered with your builder's tax bill?
Yeah, I mean, the builder themselves, what you need to get from them is confirmation that they're doing everything that they need to be doing. So if you get their CIS sort of registration details and everything else, then you can check that they are actually doing what they need to do. The main thing you can do for yourself is educate yourself about it, and also have an awareness of it, so that when you do talk to your accountant, you can get a proper considered answer from them, and not just say no, you don't need to think about that. You're not there with a hammer, so you don't need to think about it, which we know isn't the case. So it's really a case of making sure you get good advice on what you need to do and what the obligations are.
Before we got recording this video, we were chatting about a case where a developer had a family operated CIS. They had a contractor who was having the deductions made, but there was an issue with the tax office. Do you want to sort of explain where things can go really wrong?
Yeah, so where I guess the other thing to make sure is, yes, once you've met your obligations for registering, that actually everything is being executed correctly as well. Because in this example, they were using an outsourced payroll company to run their payroll for their employees, but also the CIS. And there was an issue with those deductions and payments onto the revenue, and the revenue have come back up to the company above, the one that had hired this payroll bureau, and has withheld tax from them, and is trying to recover further backdated taxes from them as well, where the payments just haven't been made. So you kind of need to ensure that you stay on top of your government gateway accounts, make sure everything's filed, or your accountant does, and make sure that everything is paid as well as being filed, so there's not just an accruing liability sitting there.
So what we're effectively saying is, although to all intents and purposes, the management of that development company thought they were operating the CIS correctly, because the payroll agency that they were using had actually made incorrect calculations, it had tax implications on the development company. So it's really important that you verify the professionals that you hire. Now, I know Tej is from Niger Accountants. They are chartered tax accountants, specialists in all aspects of taxation, and is somebody that you should reach out to and ask for some advice, or even contract with Tej to get your work done. Tej, any final words that you'd like to bring in?
No, it's just a case of make sure that you're aware of the potential obligations that are on you, and make sure that you've considered whether you need to register and then get it done. But also, with that example, make sure that you keep an eye on it being run properly. Don't just think, it's something somebody else is going to be looking after now, and I don't need to bother. Doesn't work with anything, does it?
It certainly doesn't. So my advice to you is, don't get caught out. Don't end up paying your builder's tax bill. Follow the simple tips that Tej has given you here. And if you feel that you need to register, reach out to Tej right now. His details are below, and get some proper advice. It is well worth it. You don't want to be paying your builder's tax bill. If you want to hear more great content like this, make sure you stay tuned. Smash that subscribe button, hit the like button, and hit the bell icon. And when Tej and I release the next video in this tax series, you will be the first to know. Thank you from Andrew Roberts.
And thank you from Tej Gill.
All the best.